YouTube link? I could throw that up real quick on the Facebook.
Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. I have Brad Olson with me once again. So we had a little difficulty with YouTube. Looks like I put some language in there that they're not happy about. That has to do with World War II Germans. Right. So Brad is telling me that they don't like to be called that anymore. It starts with an N, has a Z in there. So they don't like that anymore. Obviously, YouTube doesn't like that either. So that's interesting. Now, Brad and I have talked about this for quite some time, for a couple of years. The Bush family, the Scherf family initially. So Prescott Bush was basically was in the German Navy, was born there in Germany before WW2. And then his son, HW, was born there. And so you have a senator and a president and also head of the CIA, H.W. Bush, that was not born in the United States, was born in Germany. So we obviously have some issues there. But so I don't know how that gets fixed, but all I care about right now is doing our YouTube show. So trying to get that squared away. We're going to show you a picture of the Scherf family with there we go. So the Scherf family, and they have a lot of people in there like Otto Skorzeny, Joseph Mengele, Dr. Death, and who's the other guy? Martin Bormann. So three people that we know are World War II German officers, right? And they're is that wow?
That's Prescott Bush, the grandfather.
That's Prescott with Mr.
Good old
Mr. Little Mustache himself, huh? That went to Argentina with like 250,000 German officers and soldiers. Wow, 250,000. You talk about that in your book. Your new book will be available January 1st, and you can order it now. So we're going to be talking about that in this show. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of issues there. I'm gonna share the screen. I'll show you that picture. I got it from another. Got it from another place. So here we go. So here they are, the happy family.
Yeah.
All right. So you see there, Martin Bormann. There's Mother Scherf. There's the George Scherf Jr., George Scherf Sr., who would be Prescott Bush, and of course George H.W. Bush. And they're there with Joseph Mengele, Otto Skorzeny. So a lot of these people that were part of the organization. You just showed Prescott with the ruler of the Nazi Party. So crazy stuff. And so now we're going to talk about in your latest book that's coming out, like I said, January 1st, but you can pre-order it now on Amazon. That book is called Secrets of Antarctica, the Untold History of the Ice Continent. So ice continent on the surface, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. All right, let's jump in. Brad, thanks so much for joining us again. You're award-winning author. You got #1 books all over the place. Now with this book, I'm kind of concerned, because I put out stuff like this, and they attack me and order a bunch of my books and then send them back, and then I owe a lot of money. So they've done that a couple times to me. So very frustrating. I hope you don't have that problem.
Not as much, but always great to talk to you, Michael. And wow, what an intro with so much on the plate, including 2 books, including Beyond Esoteric, which is in a second edition, and
Nice.
Antarctica, which is forthcoming, and you've offered a great endorsement of when it comes out. It's going to be a lot of groundbreaking material. And on the back cover, it says all roads lead to Antarctica. Of course, no roads lead to Antarctica, but all the stuff that you just prefaced this conversation with does have a connection to Antarctica, because that's what happened largely with all the technology and the top personnel at the end of World War II. And this is the history we're not being told, is that there were contingents within our government that were allied with the Third Reich, and also in Europe with the royal family. They were even descendants of the Kohlberg Gotha family in German. They just changed your name to Windsor so it sounds more English.
Yep.
But they're totally tied in, and they all are. And had the tides of war turned and Germany came out on top in that World War II, our history would be completely different than what we've been told for the last 80 some years. Because World War II and the outcome, and then these powers, these stay behinds, and those that went to Antarctica and South America, and in our country with the paperclip Nazis, they had started what is known as the Fourth Reich. And in other terms, with the Soviet Union and NATO also clashing during the Cold War, they were called the Third Force. And they're kind of stirring the pot the whole time, keeping those two powers fighting each other. All the while, they're developing technology, and they're under ice base in Antarctica, as well as several that I located in South America. And that was actually more of the preferred homeland, because Southern South America, where, as you know, 7 years ago when I was going down to Antarctica on a sailboat, I traveled up and back along the Patagonian Southern South America border, which is absolutely gorgeous. Some of the most beautiful landscapes on the planet. And all the while finding that there were these refuges or micronations, as John Lear, the famous pilot for the CIA and other forces, he and I had a discussion before this ended. And that's really important to understand, because it wasn't just Antarctica, although that was this frozen refuge that Karl Donitz, who was the final president and Reich Chancellor of the Third Reich after Hitler supposedly committed suicide. He really escaped. Why wouldn't he? Because he had doppelgangers they could just pop a cap in, and he lived out the rest of his life in South America. But he did visit the Antarctica colonies. And I say that plural because I've identified in the new book at least 3 locations that they colonized in the New Schwabenland general area, which on most globes is called Queen Maud Land, claimed by Norway, directly below South Africa. But it's in those areas that you'll find those giant hangars where you could fly a plane or UFO into, as well as hot water pools called the Schirmacher Ponds, named after the German pilot who landed their seaplane in it during the Schwabenland expedition. And from there, the men set out to found the Point 211, which, like our Area 51, is just a location on their map that's Point 210, Point 211, Point 212. Point 211 is actually in the Schumacher Hills area. And so that's where the Allies were going to confront them in Operation High Jump, and where they had their ass handed to them. And so that was kind of, this is the untold story of World War II, is that it actually continues all the way down in Antarctica, because it was the Antarctica Germans who, after the war, dropped the N-word because they found it offensive and too knee-jerky reaction with people. And they knew that they had to stay secret, because if there was a known refuge of these Antarctica Germans after World War II, with all the high-tech science and technology at their disposal, then there would be a full-on assault to get them out. So they had to be quiet. And because the Americans got their ass handed to them in the Battle of High Jump, we had to be quiet, especially after the 1952 flyover of Washington, D.C., which at the time, most ufologists thought, we're being invaded by UFOs. where all the while it were the Antarctica Germans that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds, as Admiral Byrd said in the El Mercurio newspaper article right after the Battle of High Jump. So it all kind of ties into this frozen ice continent, and even up here with the Bush family and the how we can see this creeping fascism enter this country. It's that same ideology that's now generations in the making.
So here's 286 in your book, Secrets of Antarctica. Allies. We defeated the Nazis. And the Nazis say, well, Werner von Braun, head of NASA, Walter Hallstein, head of EU Commission, Adolf Heisinger, NATO's chief of staff, Kurt Waldheim, Secretary General of the United Nations, and heads of NATO have been former German officers for a long time. So that's and still to this day. So former German officers, who knows if, well, I think we know, they haven't really gone away, and they moved into all kinds of heads of positions. And like we were talking about, George H.W. Bush, or Scherf, who was born in Germany, was the head of the CIA and has a road. I remember I used to go down this road every time I'd go to the CIA and get my missions and head off overseas, headquarters, George H.W. Bush Boulevard. So, and he was the head of the CIA, and then of course the president of the United States. So we had a German, descendant from a Nazi. So that was, running the United States and CIA. Crazy.
You said the N word, not me.
That's right. We can say it in here, but I guess you can't put it on the title. Okay. Who knows? Maybe they'll come in and say, oh, AI. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how the censorship has moved to a different arena now.
Yeah.
You can't
used to talk about COVID-19. We can talk about that now. Yeah. And, but you can't talk about alternative health things that can help you. That's still no go. But, I guess they're like, okay, they all know about it, COVID-19 now. Let them talk about it. It doesn't make any difference. We have something else coming. So,
oh boy, we got something else going. But all the whole pharmaceutical industry, you can also see, was a byproduct of Germany in the 1930s and 40s.
Right.
Bayer, Monsanto, the list goes on, how many companies have also merged in here. And see, that was part of the plan, even when they knew the war was going to end in 1943, when they started getting all the material and personnel out. And then shortly thereafter, all the rest came down in the U-boats, which over 100 are missing. We did a really great talk a couple of years ago about how advanced those German U-boats were.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just kind of see and put that in the place of these flying discs, a pressurized cabin under extreme conditions outside of it, are able to function, fly, and float. It was David Hatcher Childress who told me one time, he said, even in our corps of submariners, they're looking for orphan young men that then can be recruited after their duty in submarines up into our secret space program, because they're already used to those kind of confined and pressurized environments.
Yeah, good point. Yep. Wow. And I'll talk about that on several other shows. That's fascinating stuff. But tying it all together, those submarines, I think you mentioned in your book, there was one that had like gone into underground tunnels and all kind of crazy stuff and came out the other side and of the world or something. Like crazy.
Yeah, the book called The Smoky God, a story of two 19th
yeah,
a father and son, written as a nonprofit book, because they were already living in northern Norway, and then so just above that are some Arctic Circle islands, and they sailed beyond those and entered in the North Pole. And this is according to the book, went all the way through the under ocean zones with continental land masses and came out in the southern pole region under the ice, all the while meeting with these very tall human-like beings that lived in this underworld. And there's even illustrations of what they looked like, 2-3 times the size of these guys, looking way up to them. And in the book The Smoky God, they also say that these giants would occasionally come up through this hole and navigate across the Drake Passage to South America, and they became the Patagonian giants. In my new book, I have a whole chapter on the Patagonian giants, and this was at the urging of my good friend Hugh Newman, who does a whole lot of megalithic and books on the giants. He said, dude, you gotta put in the Patagonian giants because they're just this huge subspecies, all but gone now. Unfortunately, they call them the Fuegoan Indians for Terra del Fuego, but all but gone. However, I'll tell you, Michael, and I'm a real tall guy myself, when I was down there, the tallest people I met were white Argentinians that are still like maybe cross breeding, but a few generations later, still a tall breed of people down there.
Yeah. So in your book too, there's a little spot where Magellan had interactions when he was doing his around the world, passage. So he went down in that area you're talking about right now, and he encountered them, and he said that they came up to their waist.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Their shoulders came up to the giant's waist. So again, about twice the size of some of these shorter guys. And that was the historian Pigafetta, who is one of only a dozen or so survivors of the final ship of Magellan. Even Ferdinand Magellan died in the Philippines. I've been to Mactan Island where the battle took place, where he died. And Pigafetta, the Italian historian, almost died defending Magellan, but he got out injured, and then they eventually completed the passage. Only ship called La Victoria, which there's a replica of it in San Julian Bay, where they encountered the Patagonian giants.
Wow.
And only came up to their shoulder. Two of the ships mutinied from San Julian Harbor. They thought Magellan was crazy and was going to sail off the edge of the earth. Plus, they couldn't find that passage between Patagonian and Terra del Fuego until finally another one of Magellan's ships made its way through, reported back, and then another boat sunk on the Patagonian coast, and then two made it to the Philippines. I think that fourth one was lost in the Philippines, and only the La Victoria made it back.
Wow. So do you think these giants are remnants of former, when the Atlantean, whatever, civilization where we're more advanced, and now they've just died off over time? What do you thought? What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. And then part of that South America trip 7 years ago was to see, there's a big long-headed guy with his red hair still intact.
Yep.
Cover beyond esoteric. The elongated giant skulls in Paracas, Peru. There's a whole museum of them.
Right.
And we saw them in the Sacred Valley of Peru, not far from Cusco, the ancient capital of the Incan people who built upon the pre-Incan people. And they were buried in royal tombs. The one we saw was an adolescent whose head was as big as its torso.
Wow.
So I mean, just think of the Vitruvian Man by Michelangelo, or I mean by Da Vinci.
Leonardo, yeah.
Yeah, when he's got his hands out like he's doing a jumping jack. The proportion of the human body is so much different because these ones had these ginormous heads, and you can see the way it sticks out there.
Yeah.
So they were of South America. They're actually been found around the world too. But what makes it so fascinating in what we're talking about in these Patagonian giants is that there was this long history of them living in South America among the indigenous people.
Mm.
And this is also reminiscent of Easter Island with the tall Maui statues, that the very first Dutch who sailed around through there following the Magellan Straits to get to the Pacific stumbled upon Easter Island on Easter Sunday. And at the time, they wrote how they saw two distinct people. They were very, very tall, white skinned, red hairish kind of, and then the indigenous, smaller, browner skinned people who were the Polynesians. But there was also a tall tribe that lived on Easter Island. And the Moai, those statues, are all based on this tall tribe. Because the next time that Cook came around, some 40 years later, the Dutch that first landed there, they needed to trade with them, and they bartered with the smaller Polynesians gunpowder and cannon. And by the time Cook came back around, Captain Cook, about 40 years later, everything had changed on Easter Island. There was a massive famine. They knocked over all the statues, and all the giants were dead. And they had used the gun and the gunpowder and cannon to kill them off. So there was, there's a little remnant of that. I have it in my book, Sacred Places Around the World, that account of Easter Island and how the Moai were part of it. So that's what's cool about this area of the world, Michael. It's that whole quadrant in the Southern Hemisphere that we really don't know a whole lot about. And it turned out to be a great hiding place for this Fourth Reich or this Third Force to then set up shop, because they kept paying off all these corrupt politicians. And our own CIA was even involved with getting some of these corrupt fascist politicians into office, such as Pinochet in Chile, who they deposed a democratically elected, very popular president to put him in. So then after Perón, he was very, very corrupt. He was the one that let all the Germans in after the war. And then Hitler had his house near Bariloche, and I've been to Germany several times. This was like walking into a Bavarian town. I mean, it was so Germanic. Yeah, and the beautiful soaring Andes Mountains, which looked like the Alps. And so Hitler had his hideaway house called the Anelko House. I got as close as I could, but it's like in the ultimate gated community. But that show, Hunting Hitler, they did 2 episodes where they got very, very close and actually landed at the Anelko House. And they showed the seaplane launch point. So if the authorities were ever moving in through Argentina, they could evacuate very quickly and fly over to Chile and ostensibly South America. So we got these maps that I'm including in the new book you're showing that are really going to blow the lid off of how advanced and how knowledgeable the Germans were in making their way under the ice. And you know how exact the Germans are with everything. If they say 53.5 meters, that's exactly what they mean, right?
Yeah, there seems like, we talked about Antarctica or Atlantis, and there's these massive pyramids that are down there. They're probably the oldest pyramids on the Earth. If you look at them, probably Atlantean. So there was obviously different ET races, I believe, that were here during that time frame, because we were more. We talk about how we're going 5-dimensional. I think they were probably 5-dimensional, and we got knocked down. So a negative ET race, reptilians came in, and so I get punished for saying that reptilians in these videos really? Too. Yeah. Draco reptilians. La, la, la. So it is. Yeah, I know. Probably gonna lose another channel here, but there's definitely a connection with that time frame in Atlantis, and where they, they probably, like now, they were on the roast, and we were waking up and waking each other up with this information like we're sharing right now, and they're like just knock hell out of us. So I think we need to really be, cognizant that this has happened before in history. Now we look at all the megalithic structures throughout the world, and I think Egypt they were like almost unearthing a 100-ton block of what was it? Obelisk. Thank you. And then in Syria, they had a mega stone that was like just the biggest one they'd ever had before, and so on and on. So even like Easter Island, they were working on one of those Easter Island heads that was bigger, like twice as big, 2 or 3 times bigger than all the other ones that they had on the island at the time. And then it just stopped. All of it stopped. So it's very interesting. Was it because of some kind of event, or like maybe like you're talking about, the people got wise to these evil ETs and started taking them out. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Underneath the ice, deep underground military bases. You talked about how this German group of people came up and were like the DUMBS at 10K. We've talked. Other people talk about it. I don't know if we've talked about it, but it seems like they're blowing up DUMBS at 10K.
Right.
10 kilometers down. A lot of people out there earthquakes, but they're just like one time, boom, and it's done. So it's like, there was probably a base just got taken out. And then you were talking about last time where these Germans randomly came up and you needed help or something.
Yeah, they were evacuating from somewhere they wouldn't tell, but they showed up at McMurdo in the middle of winter. This was reported by Linda Moulton Howe. Some of her whistleblowers told her, as well as Michael Sala, Exopolitics Today, who does Antarctica research. They both confirmed that 2.5, well, now going on almost 3 years ago, because when we go into our winter, they're coming out of their summer. They're starting their summer. So the travel season for Antarctica is actually starting now in November to early March. And so these guys showed up around July at McMurdo. Nobody know how they came on overland, some cats. And that's how you basically travel over the polar plateau, and how they move supplies is with the snow cats that you would see at any ski resort that can plow the ski fields. They use those quite a bit, and they link them up in chains.
Wow.
And so it's presumed these guys came all the way across the polar plateau from the New Schwabenland region, where they just had these massive earthquakes in that area, but more towards the Palmer Peninsula and a connection point to South America. Gene Decode was talking about that too.
Right.
It's about 2.5 years ago. Yeah. 10 kilometer down, 6 point something earthquakes in several locations, and along a line too.
Yep. The tunnels. Yep.
So it appears these guys, these Germans, they were getting out of there in a hurry. Perhaps they had lost their connection to the outside world and showed up there asking for relief and to fly out to Christchurch, New Zealand as soon as possible.
And I'm sure that was just all covered up. They were like, "Oh yeah, we could help you," and then it's like they probably somebody stepped in at some point. It's like, "Yeah, we got control of this. We don't want you to talk about this," and that's the kind of the way those usually work out. So, I've interestingly, when I worked for the CIA, we would go through Germany, and the Germans were really they didn't like us coming through. So there is a they leaned on us really hard, and we had to have a real good cover story. And I remember, they were questioning everybody and trying to get some kind of angle on us. And I was like, wow, I guess they're no longer like the old Nazis, or maybe just this group isn't. But it was like, and then I still hear that there's people that have these underground shelters where they have all the Nazi memorabilia, and they go down there and they have groups to come down. It's like, wow. So some people still support all that, obviously.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot. Seems like a lot of the German people have broken free. I wonder how much. Now, you talk about how Germany before World War II, they were very into the spiritual stuff, and they were traveling all over the world. Tell us a little bit about that, and they were channeling and tapping into some very interesting information, ETs and stuff.
Oh yeah, that then it's really where even the Third Reich gets its formation, because the Thule Society was formed during World War One, and
Oh,
some of the early adherents were none other than the mustache guy, Himmler, Hess, and several others who became very high ranking in that organization. And they were very interested in all the ancient lore, legend, even artifacts of previous civilizations, some that had done very well by conquering the European homeland. And that's what the First Reich and the Second Reich were. The First Reich was with the great German general who ruled out of Aachen, Germany, named Charlemagne. And
oh yeah,
he had in his possession the Spear of Destiny,
yep.
which was the spear that pierced the side of Jesus on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And any army that were to carry the Spear of Destiny would be invincible. So the very first thing that the mustache guy did when they annexed Austria in 1938 into the Third Reich was to acquire the Spear of Destiny, which was in the Habsburg Museum in Vienna, Austria. And at the end of the war, there's a very interesting story about how Patton's army, I think it was the Sixth Army, found it in just like a bank vault, a very unlikely place to find it when all the gold was missing. But here's the Spear of Destiny. But they think the SS put a decoy on, and instead the real deal went down to Antarctica with other priceless artifacts, and that has gained the Fourth Reich their invincibility in what they've been doing as this third force.
And that excellent movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where, we've talked about this before, Indiana Jones and, the Nazis, World War II, were trying to find the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
So that was, that's basically just giving us little clues, little breadcrumbs, of, what that was all about during that time frame. So, and then, of course, in the movie, they just put it in a box and they put it in a huge warehouse. No, it went to Antarctica if they ever found it. Or, I think there was many Ark of the Covenants, but if they did find one, it's probably down there. So that's their new base, and so they're talking to these ET races, channeling Maria. What was her name? Yeah,
Maria,
so she. Yep. Yeah, so she's doing the channeling and bringing information from Aldebaran or something.
Yep.
And so that's how they got the Bell and some of these other high tech craft, and that could probably, and of course they stole Nikola Tesla's information because they had Curious George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, that was in there spying around while his dad was, doing the accounting. So yeah, there's lots of information that these guys have stolen.
Right.
A lot of great information. Of course, the Germans are exceptional engineers.
Yeah.
In their own right. But they're so, and then you throw in some high tech on top of that, and they took off.
And then that's where the Vril Society steps in. They too were just after World War I, as you mentioned, with the women with the very long hair that felt it would help with their ability to telepathically communicate with Aldebaran. And it was the famous German engineer Victor Schauerberger who looked at some of the drawings that the women had produced from these seances or these telepathic connections. And he said, this is workable intelligence. We can put this with our engineering corps and start designing this stuff. So in the 19 teens, Germany, as you said, was extremely advanced technologically. And then they started getting these blueprints and drafts that they realized, wow, we've got some incredible technology at our hands. That was when the Thule Society took over the Vril Society and then started weaponizing these blueprints, these plans that they had. Plus, the Germans also acquired a down disc in 1933 in the Black Forest. That was pretty broken up, but they were still able to backward engineer and start to understand a lot of the flying dynamics of these things. But then in the late 1930s, a nearly intact UFO went down in the Lombardy region of Italy, and Mussolini allowed the German engineers to use it to backward engineer. So they had this incredible head start. They've been working on this stuff for a century now. So no wonder that the Allies were so worried about these wonder weapons at the end of World War II that they could unleash and just annihilate a whole flank of troops.
Yeah. So and then they have then they have the ET, the negative ET race that comes in and helps them out. So the Aldebaran, is that the where the Draco are from?
No, they're actually benevolent ETs. They're the ones who
the Aldebaran, huh?
Yeah, Alex Collier has a connection with as well.
Okay.
So as soon as they started to go to the dark side, Aldebaran cut them off. But the Nazis still wanted to get this more technology, and then that's when they made the deal with the devil and became allied with the Draco and the gray ETs, which are basically they're all just test tube created. All the grays are. They're a mix, even including some of our DNA, and that supposedly that's why they're here, because they're a dying race and they're trying to save themselves. But really, they're all just created beings that do not have a soul. The reptilians have a soul, and the reptilians are still mother female born entities, but they have chosen not to go to the light, so to speak. The reptilians stay in fourth dimensional and third dimensional density because they like it here, and they like playing these games, and they like to be the rulers. And the reptilians are like locusts throughout the universe. And if they have a up and coming civilization like ours, then they hive mind it and do their best to assimilate with few amounts of people, but doing macro things. And in this case, allying with the Germans. And they actually made the Faustian deal. The Germans took it in that if they were to win, that they would get a quarter of the Earth's resources, the reptilians the rest. But things didn't work out that way. And then they moved operation down to Antarctica. And it's said that when Schumacher put his plane to land the men to go ashore, they already had an idea of where to go, because they were going to find an older reptilian base that they could then refurbish and make their own. That was basically given to them. So all the while, the reptilians have had this kind of background role, not only with the Antarctica Germans, but also was it their craft that came up out of the water to confront Admiral Byrd in Operation High Jump? There's still running debate whether in early 1947 the Germans had that technology to fly from up out of the water and then long distances. But sometimes the insignia was seen on the craft, including when Admiral Byrd, in his diary, flying down into this inner Earth area, said there was swastika-like emblems on the craft. So it could very well be that they were already that advanced that they could then enter their discs into battle, which some kind of flying disc did in the Battle of High Jump, which is a big part of my book and depicted on the cover as well. So that's what makes this all so interesting, is because the history we've been told is not the history that we get. And I think if history were truly to be told, you would have the Antarctic Germans being the first men to land on the moon and even colonize Mars. And that's the Nachtwaffen, the Dark Fleet, which at the end of my book, Secrets of Antarctica, I go into how their whole secret space program continued with the very advanced science of a century ago, and were then able to even transverse throughout our solar system and even set up colonies. Because when our first astronauts went around the dark side of the moon, they spotted the Nazi base, which happens to be in the shape of a swastika. So they beat our guys there by at least 20 years, probably in the 1940s. Were making their first trip there. So they were very capable of using these dish-shaped craft, and could very well have been the craft that confronted the Central Armada of ships in the Battle of High Jump.
Yeah, so there's been other shows out there, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I remember watching this as a kid, and it really looked. And this submarine could dive all the way down to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah,
and it had this flying craft that came out of it. And I always thought, of course we're going to be seeing that soon, but I guess they like to keep this information from us, and that's one of the problems that we're encountering. They steal information from those of us that are tapped into source, because they can't tap it, and they steal information from us. I have some authors, several authors that are going to come on and talk about how their information was stolen. The Matrix, the Saving Private Ryan, the woman, she was the real Saving Private Ryan. She talked to this one guy, and he basically took her information and wrote the book, and then they did the movie. So they are in so many different areas. They do this stuff. Films, and like we're just talking right now, and other areas, technology. Someone comes up with hydrogen, which is basically going to be the future. Hydrogen will absolutely be the future. It already is here. I saw hydrogen on submarines when I was working in the Navy. Very, very effective. But they've kept that from us. So if someone comes up with a hydrogen water-based vehicle, and they come and it's like, oh, we're gonna take this technology and give it to everybody, and they just take it and go away with it, and then that person ends up dead. And that's one of the things they just keep doing. They keep stealing the technology, like Tesla, free energy and so forth. Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, strange new world is where it's going. It's already there. Yeah. But wow, this is a time to be alive, to see it all start to come down. Because on the other hand, you also have the Great Awakening, where people are starting to see through this very finely crafted facade built up by the intelligence sources, by our mainstream media, to create this narrative. But the cracks are forming, and part of the Great Awakening is having the intuition, as you write about in your books, awakening to this intuition to be able to see through this facade that has been so carefully created. I love the meme during the pandemic when it showed Bill Gates making this face like, oh, of abject horror. And it says, that face you make when a meme destroys your multi-billion-dollar propaganda campaign, because people just start to see right through it. And we're starting to see that there was this third force all the while, based out of Antarctica and South America, in these micro nations where they just own these huge land tracts down there. And that's part of where some of the hardware went, including this area near La Falda, which had the Eden Hotel that Hitler and Eva Braun and even their dog Blondie famously showed up at several times after World War II. And not far from there, though, Michael, there's this other mountain range in southern South America called the Sierra del Cordoba, near the second largest city, Cordoba. And on the southern end of that mountain range is this very famous UFO hotspot. It's even written up in Lonely Planet that people get abducted there, and these UFO craft leave burn marks on the ground, and people have seen them, and they're coming and going out of this mountain all the time for decades. So I come back from the trip, and I'm so eager to tell David Hatcher Childress this, and he also does a lot of work and books on German high technology and crafts and forth. I got one of his right here about the Honeyboo craft. That these were the main crafts that flew that they developed in World War II and then went on. And he thinks it was the Honeyboo craft that people were seeing and reporting in the Sierra del Cordoba mountain range. I said, well, how do you think that? He said, Brad, those aren't aliens. Those are the Germans. They had an underground base there. And this is when they're testing their technology. He said, do you really think that real UFOs would have rivets in them and sometimes be seen with smoke coming out or leave burn marks? He goes, that wasn't aliens. It was the Antarctica or South American Germans, the Third Force, the Fourth Reich, all this time, which have basically been written out of our history. And only now are we starting to put enough pieces together that shows that they've been around the whole time, just like they've been in New Schwabenland the whole time in Antarctica. They never left.
Yeah. And I see in your book that you have tons of stuff on ET craft that's under, just about kind of under the ice, but kind of peeking out, and they found all this stuff. It's incredible. And of course, Hollow Earth under there's like a whole, because there's so much volcanic activity there. There's like, you just go below the level of the ice, and it's like a whole world down there.
Right. So just like the sonar scans of the Giza Plateau a couple months ago, they've been doing that on the ice, which is actually easier to penetrate because it's not as dense as Earth, but finding that there are whole ecosystems that exist under the ice. As you mentioned, the geothermal activity, the continent of Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world, with all kinds of heating domes and vents where life loves to flourish. And so at the very least, they're finding it's a whole new ecosystem down there, but also that there could have been these legacy bases that have been down there, as well as some high-tech civilizations, such as Admiral Byrd writes about in his diary, which is only getting more verification as time goes on. In fact, there's just a new video that's been popping up that shows this guy who was working in intelligence, and he wanted to go to the National Archive to see these pictures that they had from Admiral Byrd's trip, that he took over 300 pictures that they will not release to the public. But Admiral Byrd writes about it in his diary that he goes to this shimmering, pastel colored, high-tech civilization and meets with the master, who's telepathic. He said he was reading his thoughts. And this is where it gets really interesting, because like William Cooper said, you put the aliens in the middle of this stuff and you get all the answers. So you really have to factor in the extraterrestrial component here, even if they're very advanced human-like entities that look very much like us. There's a model kit of the Honeyboo 2 from Revel. You used to make plastic model toys, I'm sure, Michael. I did.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even buy these in Germany right now. Childress had this one. He ordered it from Turkey because they have outlawed anything with the swastika or even the black sun symbol, and anything that could glorify the Third Reich is outlawed in Germany.
And on YouTube.
and on YouTube. So I'm going over to Germany in May, and I'm going to do this conference presentation I have of the Antarctica Germans.
Wow.
Having these colonies there still to this day, and we'll see how I'm received. Hopefully I'll be able to make it out. But it's time the world knows how advanced they were, how this part of history has not been stolen, and how much evidence there is to support it. And there's the symbol of the black sun, which plays a big role in the underground. And that too is still an outlawed symbol, like the swastika in Germany today.
And this was on the floor of that castle.
Yeah, the Wee Weaselberg Castle.
Yep, right here.
Yeah, I have that in my book too. And when I go over there, I'm going to meet up with Frank Jacob, filmmaker, and his girlfriend Tanya Badenford, and they have found the Bavarian hunting lodge where the Brill women were receiving those transmissions. So we're going to go there, and we're going to go to Wee Weaselberg Castle and go see.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
In May. So I'm going to do a little field trip. Where is he now? Yeah,
yep, absolutely. Wow, you do so good with that.
Well, we're both speaking at the Alien conference in March down in LA, if anybody wants to come. This is the map of Weaselberg Castle, which is the point of the tip of the spear. Think again, Spear of Destiny. And that's where the SS and all their occultic practices would do these ginormous festivals. And they were planning that this was going to be the mother of all Aryan inspired festivals at Wee Weaselberg Castle. But the war ended before they finalized the larger grounds around Wee Weaselberg, which was going to be in the shape of a spear.
And in Aachen, that Charlemagne had his tomb, and he was supposedly it was like this giant of a man, and so the Nazis went in. It had been undisturbed, but the Nazis had to know, so they went in, they opened it up and looked, and it's like I guess it wasn't as big as everybody thought it was, but that's kind of the way they were. Like we're talking about, they were going everywhere and exploring everything and finding out all kind of crazy stuff. And they suppress it.
Yep.
They find out and they suppress it, and they teach us stupid stuff in school. So we can never get to these levels that they're at because we're taught stupid stuff.
How many genders, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. So it's another
who runs the Fourth Reich, which
curveball.
Really be learning
more curveballs to keep everybody dumbed down and focus on other things that will not let us advance. But it's not working out. We're definitely advancing.
Victory of the light, and I think humans win in the end. I think it's a Bible verse that says, "In the end, God wins. The light will win. We will prevail." But we got to go through this dark night of the soul, where we basically look at our reflection of who we are, and this is part of the story of who we are. Humans have done some really dark, demented stuff to each other over the centuries, and in order for us to then move up to these higher vibrational dimensional states, we've got to basically confront ourselves and what we've done. And each one of us in past lives too is all going to be part of this reckoning. And that's how, when we get through this dark night of the soul, then it will be the light at the end of the tunnel. And I do think there is a golden age in store for the human race.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's what I love doing. That's why one of the reasons why I love doing shows with you, because some of this is heavy information, but learning this opens us up to the future. Because if we don't learn this stuff, this dark side, we can't go to the next level.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why they suppress it so hard.
Yep.
So there's dark and there's light. You can focus on the light, but you have to learn from the dark too. And that's one of the things that we're finding through this craziness that's out there.
Right. And part of this great awakening, Michael, I'm sure you'll agree, is when you do align yourself with the light and the truth and start to really hone in that intuition and that inner knowing of who you are, the know thyself. And when you do start to only speak the truth and only be in service to others and only do your very best to help heal this donkey of a planet that's been abused so hard, can we finally start to see this for what it really is? I think that's the nature of William Blake's quote. When you cleanse the lens of perspective, perception, then you see the world the way it really is. The doors of perception. That's where the band The Doors got their name from, that William Blake quote. And that's kind of how I see it. And that's where a lot of sometimes my information and research comes from that inner knowing as well, or being able to put these dots together in a coherent way. And then you see, oh, that's what it's all about. All these things do really interconnect. And this part of this lost history of the Germans playing a much larger role in the world post World War II than almost anybody has any idea they have.
Yeah, they're pretty much ruling the world for a great part. So you have a fantastic website, bradolson.com. That's spelled with O-S-E-N.
Olson.
Yeah. Olson.
I don't know if I told you the story though, but one day at Christmas dinner about 20 years ago, my 95-year-old grandmother, in a shocking statement, says to everyone, "Your last name isn't really Olson." We're like, "What?" She said, "Your great grandfather, when he came over here, he was on a boat full of really wealthy Danish people." And in Denmark, Olson, the way it's spelled, my way, is a very popular name in Denmark. And he goes, she says, "Your real last name is Rasmussen." And he just changed it when he got to Ellis Island because he wanted the Olson family to be successful like the Danes. Wow, Grandma, thanks for dropping that bomb on dinner. Hey, that's who it is.
All right. Wow. So that's good stuff. You have keep coming out with these great books. You travel the world. You bring out this great information. Soon you're gonna be traveling to Germany. Wow, and bringing out more information.
And the Bosnian Pyramid in June for the
really.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I'm going to the UK next month for the Basis project. So 3 trips to Europe in the next half year.
Wow.
And Beyond Esoterics now out in the 2nd edition. A lot of the information I was talking about today is from that. And Secrets of Antarctica will be out by the end of the year. But I should be getting advanced copies in another week or two. So as soon as they go live on CCC Publishing, that means I'll have books to send out to people who want to order a copy. But I don't have it up there yet, but it should be up this week, I think. And the new books are almost done from the printer and off to our distributor. So that's good news. It's all moving forward. And now it's just time to share a lot of this information with people. So thank you so much for having me on. Always a great pleasure to talk to you. We have so much of this kind of inside information that you and I and our perspective paths in life have accumulated. So it's great to come together and conjoin what you know and what I know and have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'd love to go on that trip with you to the Bosnian Pyramid. Maybe we can talk about that. Tracy too, I'm sure, would be game for that.
Billy Carson's on that one too.
Great information as always, Brad. Always enjoy our conversations. It's like you've been revealing things that now people are starting to catch up with years ago. And now everybody's talking about the Antarctica, the Nazis down there, or the German Antarcticans. So, Antarctic Germans. So there is a big movement to awaken consciousness, and you've been part of it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Michael. I look forward to seeing you this winter and enjoying some of that snow behind you with
Absolutely.
my skis underfoot. Say hi
All
to
right.
Tracy, Joe, and we'll catch you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, buddy.